How's everyone?
Very good.
Good, David.
Mr. Jackson, are you ready for me to call the meeting to order?
I think we are ready to go, Dr. Simpson.
Okay. This time I call to order the special meeting teleconference of the OSSAA Board of Directors for September 18th, 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome everyone on the call today. I would remind those watching who are not board members or OSSAA staff that this meeting is not a public meeting, but rather a business meeting conducted in public. In that spirit, I would ask those who are not board members or OSSAA staff members to mute themselves, and to assure bandwidth stability, please turn off your video. At this time, I would ask Ms. Woods to deliver the invocation.
Thank you. Could you please bow with me? Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together today safely to make sure that we take into consideration all of the things that need to be taken into consideration to keep the kids of Oklahoma that are competing safe. We thank you for your grace and your mercy, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Woods. The only item on the agenda is item 1A, vote to approve or not approve board policy regarding district contests in football and fast pitch softball. Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Dr. Simpson. Yeah, you know, the purpose of this meeting is to try to make some amendments to our activities that are played in districts right now. That's fast pitch, softball, and football. At the time that we brought what we thought would cover some of the areas that we're talking about today, when we brought you that board policy 56 back in June, you know, we developed that policy in an effort to be able to provide some relief for those schools that were impacted by the virus. You either had a number of positive cases at your school, or you had to quarantine a good number of students because of some positive cases there. And we wanted to give some relief to your activities so that you didn't have to forfeit activities. The only problem is we anticipated, like what happened in the spring, that schools, if they did have that kind of an impact, they would be closing again, like what happened in the spring. Well, that's not happening, obviously. If you're not already there and you have that scenario, you're just moving to virtual. We're not closing schools. So it renders the policy useless in effect, because you're not closing. So if you have to miss a contest, then that's going to be considered a forfeiture, again, because the way that particular policy is written. So what we wanted to do is to, and instead of going and rewriting a new policy, we wanted to reserve that for what we do in the spring when we manage all our policies. Our playoff structure, how we handle district play, is still written in our activity manuals, which are considered board policy. So we wanted to take our activity policies in those particular activities in football and fast pitch, and we wanted to recommend to you some language that would get us that relief that we were trying to get with board policy 56. In other words, we wanted to remove that requirement that your school had to close in order for you to gain that relief, and not have to be, your contest not be considered a forfeiture if you had to miss because of the COVID impact. So the documents that we sent you has a lot of language in it because we're describing the different scenarios that could happen in a district, but But basically what we're asking is to approve the language for those activities to where if a superintendent sends me something in writing to tell me that they cannot participate in a contest because of COVID impact, then we're going to take that and let that be enough to accomplish what we were trying to accomplish with the policy, where you did not have to call that contest a forfeiture. We're encouraging trying to find the time to reschedule if possible, but we also understand that's not always possible. And we did not want that to work against the school in that situation. So basically, we're asking you to approve allowing us to have language that would allow a school superintendent to notify us of a contest that could not be played for their school and us not consider that a forfeiture because they're not closing school.
Okay, board members, I believe you've all received the proposal that Mr. Jackson has from an email this morning. I guess I'd open it up to the rest of the board for comments, questions. I've already, Mr. Jackson, I've visited quite a bit about this already, and he's clarified some things with me, but I want to have an opportunity for some dialogue with the rest of the board.
I'll make a motion we approve.
Okay, Kevin, Mike, I do have a couple of questions. Kevin just beat me to jumping in there.
Okay.
So I can either ask them now or ask them later. You tell me how you want to proceed.
Kevin, are you willing to withdraw your motion?
Oh, yes, everybody was just silent, so I was going to move us forward. I'm sorry.
Or Stacey can just second the motion and then you go to questions.
Either way, I'd rather just, we can withdraw the motion, and Stacey, if you want to go ahead and have the discussion.
So you said, Mike, that you had talked with David and received some clarification. David, have we run this by some of our other groups, the OIAA athletic directors? Do we have feedback?
We do, Stacey. As a matter of fact, for the two activities that we're talking about, we did run this by the leadership, the coaches' leadership in both of those activities, as well as reached out to the OIAA to get their input as well. And both, our intent was to, we talked to the one leader to, of course, reach out to other members of those groups. And the reports that we got back were that they were all in favor.
Okay, so I have been asked the question about what about 5A and 6A softball? I mean, this addresses, I know it addresses the by district, but what happens if, will softball be handled similarly to football? What's the plan there, David?
Thank you, Stacey. And I meant to address that early on and did not. This, we have, since we sent this out to you, we caught that, yes, this is going, the short answer is yes, this is going to apply for all classes playing in districts. We have removed that title 2A, 3A, and 4A, and it will apply to all classes. Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
No, thank you for the clarification. So, Mr. Simpson, is there anything else that you think the board should know for clarity in answering questions of our member districts, just to make sure we're all clear? I know this is, it's a pandemic and everything is changing and evolving rapidly.
Well, I think, Dr. Butterfield, the sense of urgency is, of course, because we're starting district play in football next week. And so we need to try and map that out. We had some some concerns that had come up with whether or not if schools couldn't play but 2 or 3 district football games, and then they happen to win those, are we really selecting the schools that are most deserving for a district championship, and trying to preserve equity in crazy times? And David, I'm glad you clarified that on taking out the 5A, 6A in softball. Most of what I had looked at with Mr. Jackson was with football. And I think it's the one thing that I was most concerned about is being clear with the membership on the point differential and how that would be applied. Because the early draft that we got, it was a little bit more fuzzy, but that was a product of people not being in the office together and things like that with Mr. Whaley and Mr. Jackson, I believe, yesterday, and trying to get this thing together. Those things were clarified for me. I guess the question is with the rest of the board members, do we have anything that needs clarification or understanding there?
Mr. Simpson, I could answer a couple of questions that have already come to me from a couple of folks who have seen the plan, if you want me to.
Sure, that'd be great, Mike.
The first thought was that, this is going to be the superintendent's call. And if it's a COVID-related issue, that's all we're going to need to hear. We're not going to go into what exactly that is and how many you've got, or is there a cutoff point. If the superintendent determines that she cannot field a team, then that starts the policy in play. If it doesn't happen within a district, and I would hate to hazard a guess about whether it will or it won't, but if it doesn't, then that district's still on the playoff plan that we use every year, and that's in the manual. And so this only comes into play should any one game within the football district be canceled due to a COVID-related issue. A couple of them have asked me, well, what if our opponent got COVIDed out, somebody else's opponent got COVIDed out in another district? Could we play a game that week? Sure you could. Now you understand that you still only get 10 games. So if you do play an unscheduled game during that time, you've eliminated the possibility of making up that district game. But the feedback we got from football coaches was that's real practical for us to make up a football game because as our staff pointed out to me yesterday as we were looking at this, if you put a varsity football game on a Monday or Tuesday night, basically you're going to play 3 varsity football games in 8 days. And I'm not really sure the way things are right now in the world of concussion and sports medicine and all those kind of things that we really want to go down that path. I mean, I think that is something we need to address in our rule, because right now our rule allows 2 games in a week, and maybe that's something we need to talk about. But that was the feedback we got from some of the coaches. They weren't real excited about playing a makeup game. Now they found somebody who also, which I think we saw this week, we had a game canceled and Tulsa, Washington and Bishop McGuinness ended up scheduling a game within 2 days, but they both found out they didn't have an opponent and they were both open and they wanted to play a game. We were hoping this policy would encourage play instead of taking the way, do I play or do I forfeit? We wanted to encourage play and give them opportunities. There is no forfeitures in this plan. None. Nobody gets a forfeit win. Nobody takes a forfeit loss. No one takes points off or adds points. If the game is canceled, it's a non-game. It didn't happen. And they could reschedule it up to the last Saturday of football season, which would be November the 8th, if they had that opportunity to do that. But those were a couple of the questions that came to me in that there is a thing in here called average marginal points that no one has ever seen before. And what that is we couldn't say marginal points to help us break a tie because we didn't have any idea how many district games everybody would play. So we're going to take an average of that if we have to use points. So if you played 5 games, it's your 5-game marginal point. If you only played 4, it's your 4-game marginal point average. So that was the mathematical way to take care of that scenario.
Mr. Schneeberger, did you have a question? It looked like you were getting ready to ask before Mr. Whaley started talking.
Well, I think I understand it. So if we just have one no contest game in our district, then we go to the top here, what it says. No.
Yes. That's correct, Mr. Schneeberger. If in your district there is one scenario where someone couldn't play, then this new policy goes into effect.
Is there a minimum number of games that a team would have to play?
There's not, Dr. Woods, and that is why something else that's different than the policy that you approved in June is we were going to look at a winning percentage to advance you to the playoffs. And to your question, that could really skew, we determined that could skew, as Dr. Simpson mentioned early on, who actually advanced. Don't know that you would be getting the best teams to advance, because you could have someone that played just a very minimal number of games and won them and advanced over someone who played more games, but might end up being a better team. So we're going to look at the number of district wins when we use this policy.
Kevin, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Mike, I appreciate the fact that you put it on the superintendents and you're going to trust us. You know, we as superintendents, we sometimes feel like we're not heard, and it's going to require some ethics on all the superintendents of the state to make sure they don't try to abuse it. And it's also going to require some professional accountability on those other superintendents. And if we're willing to call out someone, if, you know, we got jinxed this week, we're just going to cancel school Friday and write you a letter because we're going to get beat anyway. So it's going to, you know, it's going to require that. And I appreciate that it's no questions asked. If we do the right thing, you're going to expect that we did the right thing. And I think that's a big step for the OSSAA, and hopefully the superintendents across the state use this opportunity to show that we can be trusted to do the right thing for everyone. And so that's one reason I was quickly for it.
Well, I want to say I trust my colleagues, and I'm sure we're all struggling with all of these decisions, and that nobody is going to take the cancellation of a football game or any sport or activity for a kid lightly, and do something that would potentially cause a kid not to be able to play or to compete. So I have that faith in my colleagues.
One of the reasons we wanted to bring this to you is we did recognize the fact that school leaders, superintendents have so much to deal with right now that we wanted to at least minimize the what we're putting on your plate in terms of activities, and having to make those decisions like Mr. Heim is talking about, whether or not I'm going to cancel a game simply because I know we're not going to fare well. We want to take that off your plate when you're dealing with some really serious issues. So that's our effort to help in that way. Dr. Simpson, the only other thing I would ask, if anyone would be in favor of this motion or be in favor of making a motion to approve this, I would also ask that you would add to that to allow us to make similar adjustments to activities in which we play in districts for the remainder of the 2021 school year, so that we don't have to have a special meeting for each one of those activities going forward.
I think
So
that would
moved
be
as
a very
requested.
appropriate motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just
No,
put so move as requested by David Jackson.
Okay.
Meredith will second.
We have a motion by Heim, second by Meredith, to approve the proposals as presented with the amendment of adding in softball 2A, 3A, 4A, and also 5A, 6A, and granting OSSAA staff to make similar modifications to other district sports that are conducted with the district, so that a special meeting is not required. Is that accurate for your motion, Mr. Heim? Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mr. Sternberger,
Yes.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
Mr. Melton,
Yes.
Mr. Needham,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Puffenbarger,
Yes.
Dr. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. McNutt,
Yes.
Mr. Acord,
Yes.
Mr. Schneeberger,
Yes.
Dr. Butterfield,
Yes.
Mr. Heim.
Yes.
Motion carries 12-0.
All right. There is no other agenda items except for a motion and vote to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Meredith, second by Woods to adjourn the meeting. Please call the roll.
Mr. Poole,
Yes.
Mr. Melton,
Yes.
Mr. Needham,
Yes.
Mr. Meredith,
Yes.
Mr. Puffenbarger,
Yes.
Dr. Woods,
Yes.
Mr. McNutt,
Yes.
Mr. Acord,
Yes.
Mr. Schneeberger,
Yes.
Dr. Butterfield,
Yes.
Mr. Heim,
Yes.
Mr. Sternberger.
Yes.
Motion carries 12-0.
Right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend.